was like, yeah, I feel that. I'm not into one night stands either. Just looking for someone fun and going with the flow, if that makes sense. And looks like we're on the same page. So I was like, why don't you shoot me your number and we can grab a drink sometime? And just like that, number secured.
When you get that excited about getting a number off a dating app, it's usually a sign that you're overinvested. I can't tell you how many times I've fallen into this same trap. And it wasn't until I started to see my own pattern, especially around how I dealt with dry texters, that I started to understand how I was giving up leverage and handling it wrong. So today we're gonna look at this quick short and break down what's going on, because I think it's very, very important for men to understand how we give up leverage in these interactions and how this actually leads to a lot of things that we complain about a lot. By the end of the video, I'll actually highlight how to go about doing it, but once you see the pattern, it really should be intuitive in terms of how to deal with this and how to move forward and protect your frame. So with that being said, let's dive in.
Match with this absolute 9 out of 10 on Hinge. And I was like, all the best.
We can stop right there. You do not know if she's a 9 out of 10. At this point, the only thing you know is that you matched with a profile that had really good photos. I cannot tell you how many times I've fallen into this trap, but think about it. How many times have you met a girl on a dating app, met her in person, and she looked completely different? It's very important for men to understand, because what happens right in this moment sets the stage for the rest of the scenario. And I can tell you what happens. You overinvest in fantasy, the idea of her based on what she looks like, regardless if that's real or not. And the minute you do that, you get out of position, because instead of filtering for alignment, you start chasing outcome. Watch how it plays out.
Match with this absolute 9 out of 10 on Hinge. And I was like, all the best pickup lines are taken, but I see you aren't. She basically one words me and just says smooth. So tried to.
That line is corny as hell, but it's a lot better than a generic message. He clearly got creative and put some effort into it to create conversation. So he actually gets points for that. It doesn't really matter how smooth your first message is. You just want something that is engaging and unique. Now, her response, me personally, I would immediately not text back. And I'm not saying this because of bravado. One, we're on a dating app, so this is automatic cheap attention. It's low commitment. And so typically these one-word messages don't do it for me. Now, that doesn't mean I've never been in a position where I wanted to respond and have. Like, I've done that millions of times, because you don't realize what's actually going on in this scenario. One, you put effort and creativity into having, a light but welcoming opening, and she didn't match your energy. And that's the most important thing that you have to understand at this stage. It's like your energy is not being matched. And given that we're on a dating app, I would just go ahead and not respond. But let's be honest, not everybody's gonna do that. The next thing that you could do, if anything, is you could like the message and keep it moving, because liking the message, that gives her space to know that, hey, you acknowledge what she said, but you're not gonna meet her low energy with response. So that gives her space to decide, okay, does she wanna continue the conversation or not? If she wants to continue the conversation, she'll double text and reply. If she doesn't, then we know that she's not interested. And 9 times out of 10, she's not gonna reply back. But you have to be comfortable with that, because this is about protecting your time, energy, and more importantly, your frame.
Keep the conversation going. I was like, does this mean we can recreate that jet ski pic? I'll be the jet ski. Again, she keeps it super short and she's like, oh my God. Trying to get her to open up a little bit. And I was like,
so far, he's been doing all the work and she's just been showing up. If you think about, one of the most common complaints we have as men is we talk about what type of value the woman is bringing to the table. Well, if this is the experiences that a lot of women are having with men, why would they expect to have to show up a certain way when it's not required? He's sitting here being creative, telling jokes, looking at her profile. I imagine she had a picture of a jet ski on there, being creative, putting in effort, and she's just giving him a one-word response. So the alignment is already not there. So far, we have all the information that we need. If you thought I was being premature by saying I wouldn't have replied after she sent the one word, that idea is starting to be confirmed now, because she's still not giving energy. And what he's doing is he's doubling down on it. Let's see where this gets us.
Trying to get her to open up a little bit, and I was like, that was hilarious, and you know it. And she opens up a bit. She's like, I did slightly laugh. I'll give you that. Whenever I'm dealing with a pretty dry texter, I like to just call them out on it. See if I can find any level of interest before I just move on. So I was like, glad you have at least some personality. She's like, yeah, I'd like to think I have a bit of that. Appreciate you recognizing it. So finally getting a bit of sarcastic.
So now two things are going wrong. Like, he continues to be out of position. Instead of filtering for alignment, he's performing. And that performance leads to frustration because she's not engaging in the conversation. Now, he makes it sound light here, right? Like, whenever someone is like this, I like to call it out. But I've been in this situation, and I know at this stage in the conversation, I'm frustrated. And by the time you're frustrated on a dating app, you're already over invested. So you lose all leverage. By the time you call her out, she knows that you're frustrated because you want her. At this point, she knows, okay, all I got to do is show up and do nothing. And that's the number one thing that men complain about. Women don't bring anything to the table. Well, if this is the average experiences that they're having, it makes a lot of sense. And I think it's important to look at this pattern because this is where it starts very early. It starts a lot earlier than what you think.
Humor out of her. It's a pretty good sign. I was like, you're cute. What are you looking for on here? Just going with the flow, not necessarily a hookup person, but not trying to push anything either. How about you? I was like,
so he finally got her to ask her first question. But what she said before that is very revealing. You see, this is what a lot of guys miss. Essentially, what she's saying is, I want to go out and have fun, and I don't want you to expect sex in return. Look at her words. Just going with the flow, not necessarily a hookup person, but not trying to push anything either. So he interpreted that in real time as like, hey, she's just going with the flow. She don't want to rush anything. Let's, date and see what happens. But what she's really saying is, I'm open to hanging out, but I don't want you to have any expectations, especially not with sex. And so when men go out, they hope for that outcome and they don't get it, they get frustrated. But she been keeping it real from you since the start, right? He overlooks that. Look how he responds.
I was like, yeah, I feel that. I'm not into one night stands either. Just looking for someone fun and going with the flow, if that makes sense. And looks like we're on the same page. So I was like, why don't you shoot me your number and we can grab a drink sometime? And just like that, number secured.
Y'all are not on the same page. She is open to going out because it doesn't cost her anything. She doesn't lose anything by just showing up. You want to go out to see if you can get the outcome that you have in mind. So he's providing the entertainment and picking up the tab. She wants to go out just to have fun, and she's completely non-committal. That's two different things. And she was very clear about that, but he's projecting onto her the fantasy because the profile is a 9 out of 10. Now, if this one is smart, she should also tell him to Uber her to the place. Like, really get in there for free. Get the Uber going and coming. That's all right. Okay, if it's not clear by now, I'm going to map out 3 keys that are very important when it comes to navigating a dry texter. So the first thing not to do is you cannot reward dry texting with more effort. So if she sends a one-word response, like it, let her acknowledge that you've seen it, and put the ball right back in her court. This is about giving space for her to play her hand. If she's interested, she's going to hit you back. If not, you keep it moving. You got to be confident enough to leave space for women to show up for the connection on their own. And that's telling you a lot of information. Like, the woman who takes time to reciprocate the energy you're giving her, that's sending you a signal that she's interested and she's open. Now, if she's not doing that, we don't necessarily know why. She could be busy. She could be not interested. She could be someone who don't like to text. That is true. But when you're on dating apps, the number one thing you should be doing is filtering. And that leads us to the second thing is let silence do the filtering. Be comfortable with creating engaging conversations, but within those conversations, leave space for her to invest and push forward. Because if she's interested, she has one or two choices. She can either lean in and send another message or not. Either way, you got all the information you need at that point. If she's not willing to invest, you shouldn't either. And it's important for men to understand that because you're bringing so much to the table. The mere fact that you're expected to pick up the tab if you go on a date, right? The least that she could do is be engaging in conversation. And you should want that. By the time you ask a woman out on a date, it really should be just like a common sense thing to do based on the interaction that you have. The last thing is stop trying to convert. When you're focusing on outcome, again, this starts with the minute you think that she's a 9 out of 10, you give away leverage because you really need to be filtering on who that person is and if alignment makes sense. And the only way you can do that is if you give them space to lean into the connection and see where it goes. But anytime you're pushing the conversation through, and to be honest, I've had situations where I was able to like push and drive the bus as far as I wanted it to go, but it will always, no matter how far you go, it will always stop short at the connection not being aligned. So at some point it will reveal itself. So you save yourself a lot of time, energy, and frustration by giving them space to show up. So those are gonna be the 3 principles. Stop rewarding low effort behavior, let silence do the filtering, and stop trying to convert. Anytime you're connecting with a woman, or anytime you wanna invest in a woman, you need to give her space to show reciprocation. Anything short of that is most likely gonna end in disappointment and frustration. And a lot of it can be prevented by just taking time to filter instead of control the outcome. So if you like this, let me know what your experience has been. Like, comment, subscribe. And in the meantime, I'm gonna go ahead and get out of here.